Well, well, well. This is some interesting news. So as most of you know, Jon Jones, he was removed from UFC 200 because he tested positive for 2 banned substances. Both the UFC and Jon Jones, his camp, nobody is saying what the 2 substances are, but they know what it is. They've been told what it is, and they could tell us what it is if they wanted to. Obviously, they don't want to tell us. And if you saw the press conference, you saw that Jon Jones was crying and he was saying he's not a cheater, I've never cheated, blah, blah, blah. And he also said that whatever he tested for, he didn't know how to pronounce it. He couldn't pronounce the names. And then he said that in his training, he didn't really jot down everything that he was taking. So he doesn't know where the substance came from. But today, reports are coming out that Jon Jones tested positive for estrogen blockers. So you're probably saying, what is an estrogen blocker? An estrogen blocker is something that athletes use to prevent side effects like man tits. Have you ever heard that term before? Man tits? So for instance, when an athlete raises his level of testosterone unnaturally, meaning that he synthetically increases the testosterone in his body, what your body does in return is when it sees this increase, it's gonna convert the increase into estrogen. But when you do that, you can get side effects like man tits or acne. There's lots of different side effects. So a blocker, an estrogen blocker, is gonna remove the excess testosterone, but it's not gonna allow it to be converted into estrogen. Your body naturally produces testosterone, so you don't have to worry about this whole estrogen problem. But when you synthetically do it, when you inject artificial testosterone to boost up your levels, then your body says, hey, whoa, that's too much, and it has to get rid of it. One way to test an athlete to see if they've been taking PEDs is to look at their testosterone levels. And if your levels are higher than normal, there's a threshold of what's normal. So if you're higher than normal, they know, you're doing something. How did you get that low? That's not natural. And the blocker is gonna hide the true levels because all the excess, it's gonna remove it. It's gonna make it seem like it's not there. Estrogen blockers, they're normally used after a steroid cycle. When an athlete starts their cycle, they start taking testosterone, their levels are increased. And because their levels are increased, the body realizes that it has so much testosterone that it doesn't need to make anymore. Because remember, the body naturally makes some of it. So at this point, your body stops producing its own testosterone. So when you come off of your cycle, your natural levels are still going to be low, and it takes a while for your body to realize that, hey, now I got to start making this again. Now, the interesting thing about all of this is that when Jon Jones tested positive for cocaine, remember that? His testosterone levels were so low. People couldn't figure out why his levels were so low, unnaturally low. And now it's looking like he's been taking these drugs, these steroids, these PEDs for a long time. And maybe that whole cocaine thing was just a way to cover up the fact that he was taking drugs. And if you remember, when he went to rehab for cocaine, he only went to rehab for 1 day. 1 day. And then he said, I'm not an addict, I just made a mistake. So maybe it was never cocaine. Maybe they just used that as the cover up for him taking steroids. But here's the thing. So many athletes are using PEDs in every sport, from baseball to basketball to football to boxers, UFC fighters, track stars, to bodybuilders, Instagram bodybuilders. In sports, a high percentage of athletes are using this stuff. The reason they don't get caught is because you can simply change one molecule in a steroid and it's undetectable. There's a guy by the name of Alex Heredia, or Angel Heredia. And this is a guy that is a known steroid mixer or chef, whatever you want to call him, scientist. And he actually has a documentary. It's on YouTube too. He has a documentary. It's in German. But in his documentary, he's saying how that's all you have to do to change a steroid to make it undetectable. All you have to do is change one little thing at the end of it, and then it's undetectable. And so a lot of the athletes that are rich, they'll pay a guy like him to come in and manufacture all of these PEDs that are undetectable. And when USADA and VADA, when they update their strings to find the newer versions, he comes in and just formulates another one. And it just goes back and forth. When they update, he updates. When they update, he updates. It's like a game of cat and mouse. And in sports, there's a lot of guys that are called strength and conditioning coaches. And they're really not strength and conditioning coaches. They're just PED scientists. They're the guys that know how to do this stuff in the lab and make these things undetectable. It's crazy. Even in basketball. My channel's mostly basketball, but there have been basketball players that were caught for this. Rashard Lewis and Jameer Nelson. They were actually suspended by the NBA. They had to miss time. They were fined and everything because they got caught. They got popped. If guys like Rashard Lewis and Jameer Nelson are taking it, then you know that the star players are taking it. Why would guys that aren't stars be taking it? That doesn't make any sense, right? You know it's there. You know it's in the league. It's in all sports, not just UFC, boxing. Every sport, it's there and it's happening. If you guys remember, in 2011, after Derrick Rose won the MVP award, he was interviewed by ESPN magazine and they asked him, on a scale of 1 to 10, how big of an issue are performing enhancing drugs in your sport? And Derrick Rose responded with 7. It's huge, and I think we need a level playing field where nobody has that advantage over the next person. And this is why in all sports, every so many months or years, somebody gets busted in some sport, and that's all the proof you need to know that it's being used. And the funny part is, I would say bodybuilders, especially guys on YouTube or Instagram, a lot of these guys are using steroids and they're not telling you. Arnold, the Terminator, as you know, he has already admitted to using steroids in his career, and you saw how big and strong he was. So when you see these bodybuilders on Instagram and they're bigger and stronger than he is, and a lot bigger and stronger, you know that they're not natural. And that's what makes this whole Jon Jones thing so interesting, is that he's getting caught here. He got popped, but we know that other people in the sport are doing it as well. They just haven't been caught. And that's why Nate Diaz is so funny. They asked him if he was surprised, and he said, everybody's on steroids. He's got so many quotables. I'm not surprised, mothers. Let me know what you think. Draymond Green of the Golden State Warriors was arrested for assault. Apparently, he was at a nightclub and a fan was taunting him, and he slapped the fan. This happened on Sunday. He was released with a $200 bond, and there were no injuries. Draymond